Good morning. This is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred. Really glad you could join me today out here in the vegetable garden. It's a beautiful spring day here in Pennsylvania, Zone 6. We're now like the third week of May here, and I have most of all my plants in the garden, and so it's just a matter of nurturing them and caring for them at this point. But it's just a beautiful time now. The sun's been shining. We've had like 5 days of rain lately, and so springtime here, the birds are really singing their praises, and the wildflowers are blooming, and all the seeds I've direct sowed out in the garden, they've really growing and developing, and so it's just an exciting time to be out in the garden. But anyhow, today I wanted to share with you 6 quick tips on how to grow healthy peppers in your vegetable garden. So thanks for joining me today out here in the vegetable garden. Peppers are one of my favorite vegetables to grow in the garden. I just love growing different varieties. Some of my favorites here that I grow are the King Arthur green bell peppers. I grow the jalapeno peppers, just a whole host of different varieties. But I always encourage gardeners to grow plenty of peppers because they're so expensive to purchase in the supermarket. Well, today I wanted to share those quick tips with you over at my garden structure. So follow me along over there. This workstation out here is really something that's been really handy for me to have out in my garden. I do a lot of my prep work for my vegetables out here on the workbench, or I clean my vegetables out here. It's just a good all-purpose workstation out in my garden, and it's just something that really didn't cost all that much money when I built it, and it's just basic construction. Well, anyhow, green peppers and bell peppers and hot peppers, sweet peppers, they're just something that my wife and I love to add to our sauces. I make stuffed peppers out of my green bell peppers or my King Arthur peppers, and we dice a lot of our peppers and freeze them over the winter. In fact, I think we're on our last big bag in our freezer. But we take like a 1-gallon freezer bag and just dice up the peppers and just store them in the freezer. We use them in our chilies and different Mexican dishes. And so tip number 1 would be peppers love warm weather. So you want to make sure that your last frost date in your area passes. You may even want to wait 1 week after that. I remember years back, our frost date here is in May 15th, but I planted my peppers and tomatoes like May 15th, and then we had a light frost, and it did some damage, and so you can get away with planting them a little bit earlier perhaps, but you just want to look at your extended forecast and just make sure that you don't have any frost coming in your area, because they do love warm feet. And so that's the one reason I plant my peppers in my 4 or 6 mil black plastic. The plastic is basically a mulch, considered a mulch, and it suppresses the weeds, it holds in the soil moisture, and it also warms up the soil early in the season. I've been at Walmart locally the last couple of months, and one thing I noticed out in their nursery is they'll put out their peppers and tomatoes like in middle of April, And I'm thinking, what are they putting them out so early for, they're going to die if the frost hits them. So you do want to make sure you don't put them out in your garden too early. Tip number 2 would be peppers love the sun. You want to make sure you provide a good 6 to 8 hours of sunlight for your peppers. As I say in most of my videos, anything with a root or fruit, they like a good 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, and your leafy greens can get away with 4 to 6 hours of sunlight. So you just want to make sure before you plant in your garden, go out and check and make sure you got plenty of sunlight. Now here in my gardens, most of my plants receive 8 hours or more of sunlight, and they just thrive by having the sun. And so anyhow, you just want to make sure you provide plenty of sunlight for your peppers. That way they're going to grow healthy and strong and give you a good harvest. Tip number 3 would be peppers love a good, rich, well-drained soil. Now here in my gardens, I add my composted leaf mulch that I amend with topsoil, and I get that from Barnside Compost locally. And in fact, this year I ended up getting 5 yards. I think the order cost me $205. That included delivery, but that 5 yards was just about right for me to go through all my garden beds and add 2 to 3 inches of that compost to my soil. And what's nice is then when the rain lands on it, it's going to almost create like a compost tea and really feed those the nutrients to your plants. I also add my alfalfa pellets. Typically like a month before the season starts, I'll add my layer of compost, and then I'll sprinkle my alfalfa pellets and then scratch them into the soil a little bit, gives them some time to break down. You could also side dress your plants with alfalfa pellets or any type of slow release fertilizer. You could also grow your peppers in containers. Make sure they're large enough, like at least a 5-gallon bucket. You just want to make sure too that you add or use a potting soil in these containers. Now I do use my composted leaf mulch in my containers that I grow certain plants in, and that seems to work really well. Tip number 4 would be you want to make sure you provide proper spacing for your pepper plants. Now here in our gardens, I plant mine about 24 inches apart. You can go anywhere from 18 to 24, but make sure you provide enough spacing around them for good air circulation. Also, when it comes to harvest time, you want to make sure you can get around those plants. And then also you could make sure you provide anywhere from 30-inch to 36-inch rows, so you can get in there and harvest your different fruits from your plants. What's my boy doing today? You enjoying a nice warm sunshine? Yeah, it feels good out here, doesn't it, little buddy? Tip number 5 would be make sure you support your pepper plants. Now here in my gardens, I use some of my tomato cages, the short ones, and then also I do use some wooden stakes. And if you do use a wooden stake, make sure that you install the stake right after you plant, because you don't want that plant to grow and develop a little bit and then spread out its roots and then come along and put a stake in it. So I make my own stakes down in my woodworking shop. I rip some stakes out of some 3/4 inch oak that I have, and they end up being anywhere from 3/4 by 3/4 inch or 3/4 by 1 inch, and maybe a good 30 inches long. And then I'll put a little point on them and use them. And I just use some hemp twine that I have to tie up my pepper plants a couple times. But you do want to make sure that that stake is at least 24 inches or more above the soil. My peppers get really heavy, and so if you have good, rich, fertile soil, you're going to get some nice sized peppers, which is something we all want. And so you just want to make sure you provide plenty of support for your peppers. And tip number 6 would be, you want to make sure you provide enough water for your pepper plants. Now here in my gardens, I add like a 1 inch of water, to my gardens. You want to deep water your vegetables, or use a slow drip system. That way the moisture and the water is going to go deep into your soil, and that's going to promote deep root growth for your plant. You want to make sure that those roots go deep and far and wide, and that's why you always want to make sure I work through my soil with my garden fork. Make sure your soil's nice and loose and aerated. That way those roots are going to spread out further, resulting in a healthy, strong plant that's going to produce more fruit. And depending on the area you live, you may have to water perhaps more than 1 inch of water per week. Well, I hope these 6 quick tips on growing healthy peppers in your garden might be helpful to you. Gardening is one big learning curve. It's full of trials and errors, and it's always good to keep a gardening log of year by year on what you grow in your garden, what mistakes you've made, and what successes you've made. The garden log, you can write down when you direct sowed certain seeds out in your garden and planted certain transplants. And for me, it's just something that's really helpful to have, that you can look back from year to year and see what mistakes you've made again, and just learn from them, because gardening certainly is a big learning curve. Well, anyhow, I hope you have a great success in your garden this year, and if you have any questions or comments about this video, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And you can also visit us at PlantSmartLiving.com, and there you can learn more about gardening, and also how you can reclaim and restore your health by adopting a whole food, plant-based, vegan lifestyle. Well, anyhow, I hope you have a wonderful day and a bountiful garden season. So until next time, this is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred.